Yeah, so basically I worked then at the Institute for Marine and Atmospheric Research at Utrecht University. And there then we just work on any kind of glaciological and then climatic fields in the polar regions. So yeah, it goes from climate modeling to measurements in the fields and modeling of dynamics of glaciers and all those kind of processes that are effective in the Arctic and in the Antarctic basically. And what I do is modeling the present day climate of the Arctic region, so including Greenland, Canadian Arctic, Svalbard and so on. And to do so then I use a regional climate model that can simulate then the snowfall and meltwater runoff over the ice sheets to then have a sense of the mass loss that the ice sheet has been experiencing then. So basically what we model with this regional climate model is actually the surface mass balance of the ice sheet, which is basically then the difference between the accumulation from winter snowfall and the ablation from meltwater that runs off to the ocean in summer. And that's the surface processes. But then the ice sheet is also losing mass due to the formation of icebergs at the margins of floating glacier tongues that are actually entering then fjords and then floating over there, and then you have like icebergs, as you can see actually in the background here, and so that's also a substantial part of the mass loss. But say before the mid-1990s, basically the ice sheet was in equilibrium because the ice sheet was actually losing mass at 400 gigatons, so that's 10 to the power 12 kilo a gigaton, due to these icebergs calving these glacier floating tongues. But it was also gaining mass at the surface from precipitation of snowfall being 700 gigaton and runoff being 300. So the net actually difference is like 400 gigaton of mass gain at the top of the ice sheet. And these two processes were balancing each other, so the ice sheet was not contributing much to the sea level rise. But after the mid-1990s, then you could see a slight increase in these icebergs discharge, while actually the runoff was really enhanced like drastically, and this actually contributed to accelerate then the mass loss of the ice sheet and its contribution to sea level rise basically. With a peak in 2012, which was an extreme year here in Greenland, really warm year, where Greenland alone actually contributed 43% to the global mean sea level rise with 1.2 millimeter, which is really substantial. And so these are the kind of processes that we are studying at the Institute. And what we do is that we use this regional climate model, and its horizontal resolution, so is 11 kilometer. And with such resolution, then you actually miss all the small glaciers and ice caps that are at the margins of the ice sheet and that are actually significantly contributing to the mass loss of Greenland. So if you cannot resolve them and capture them, then you actually miss a large part of the mass loss. So during my PhD, I developed then this technique that allows to refine then these model outputs from this coarse, regional resolution of 11 kilometer to a 1 kilometer grid that now can really model all the small glaciers that are, flowing down then the ice sheets and that are melting really fast. And when you do so, then you have like a much better representation actually of the mass loss of Greenland, because these glaciers are really contributing quite much. So basically by just representing these glaciers properly, then you can increase then the mass loss through runoff actually by 25%. So that's really highlighting the fact that these are a major contributor to the mass loss of the ice sheet. So basically I think the first thing is that on the ice sheet you find two different regions. So one region is the ablation zone, so that's really at the margins of an ice sheet. And there basically the ice sheet is losing mass at the surface because the runoff actually exceeds then the accumulation from snowfall in winter. And then over 90% of the ice sheet area, so in the interior, in the highest regions, you find the accumulation zone that is actually covered by a multi-year snow layer that is very porous. And this snow can actually absorb and then refreeze a large part of the surface melt. And that's actually protecting then the ice sheet from this excess melt to just run off to the ocean. So basically the mass loss through this meltwater that runs off is really limited to the marginal regions of the ice sheet. And that's just because then this firn layer can actually buffer large parts of the meltwater in the highest regions. But if this refreezing or sponging kind of mechanism would collapse in the future, then basically the whole ice sheet could actually contribute to mass loss of runoff because this meltwater could not be absorbed by this snow anymore, and that could actually well increase quite much then the contribution of Greenland to sea level rise, basically double it, because about half of this meltwater can be stored and refrozen then in the firn. So